high on the windswept Andean plateau, 12,800 feet above sea level, lies a place that seems almost impossible. The air is thin, the ground harsh, and yet scattered across this desolate plain are stones that defy every expectation. Blocks the size of houses, some weighing more than 100 tons, lie tossed aside as if ripped apart by a force too great to imagine. Among them, rows of strange H-shaped stones, repeating like fragments of a coded language carved in rock, whisper of a system, a logic, a plan that no one has fully understood. The first explorers to stumble upon this site more than a century ago returned stunned. They described the surfaces as if the stones had been poured from a mold, smooth and exact, every edge uncannily precise. Some swore it could not have been made by human hands. Wild theories were born: Atlantean survivors, alien architects, forgotten antediluvian engineers. The more impossible the ruins seemed, the more the myths grew. But in 2025, evidence began to surface that would turn every assumption on its head. For centuries, the world had been asking the wrong question. The secret was never buried in fantasy. It was tied to a civilization long known but often underestimated, the Tiwanaku. Flourishing between the 5th and 10th centuries, their empire stretched across the Andean trade routes, controlling water, crops, and commerce. They engineered raised fields that defied frost, irrigation canals that coaxed life from barren soil, and monuments that rivaled anything seen in the ancient world. To their descendants, Pumapunku was not a mystery. It was part of their legacy, a ceremonial heart linked to the sacred core of Tiwanaku itself. Yet Western explorers, armed with their own prejudices, ignored those voices. Oral traditions that spoke of semi-divine builders mastering stone were dismissed as myth, as if indigenous knowledge could not possibly explain such wonders. Colonial narratives painted the ruins as too advanced for local hands, erasing generations of engineering brilliance from the story. The erasure was so thorough that for decades Pumapunku was treated less as an achievement and more as an anomaly, a puzzle piece that didn't fit. But with every excavation, new patterns emerged. Motifs from the ruins echoed in Tiwanaku pottery and textiles, repeating in art, geometry, and ritual design. By 2025, advanced imaging revealed connections invisible to the naked eye, and the legacy of the Tiwanaku surged back into focus. Still, one question remained. How did they cut and shape stones harder than steel? The answer seemed impossible. Andesite, the dominant rock at Pumapunku, measures 6 to 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness. Carving it with simple tools would be like scratching glass with wood. Sandstone, softer but still immense, had been dragged from quarries nearly 90 kilometers away, raising another mystery. How had they moved them at all? For years, scholars circled the same dilemma, unwilling to imagine what means the Tiwanaku may have had at their disposal. Then, in 2025, the stones themselves began to tell their story. Electron microscopy uncovered microscopic abrasives embedded in the grooves, fragments of quartz, shards of hematite, flakes of obsidian, harder than the andesite they were cutting. These were not accidents of geology. They were the remains of tools, of deliberate choices. Experiments replicated the process. Reed drills packed with sand slurry, water channels feeding abrasive paste, and hours of relentless labor. The result? Surfaces polished to a mirror sheen, edges so sharp they looked machined. The precision marks were no longer unexplainable. They were evidence of human innovation at its absolute peak. And as the light of dawn cuts across the plateau, striking the toppled monoliths with gold, the realization deepens. The stone itself had carried the evidence all along, waiting for us to see it. But solving the mystery of cutting only sharpened the next riddle. If they could shape these impossibly precise blocks, how did they move them? Here, at nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, no beasts of burden strong enough to pull 100 tons ever existed. Wheels were unknown, the terrain was merciless, and yet the blocks of Pumapunku lie scattered as if placed by hands that mocked gravity itself. In 2025, satellites finally pierced the silence. High-resolution imaging revealed faint scars across the Altiplano, ancient pathways pressed into the earth, invisible from the ground, yet undeniable from the sky. Soil compaction tests confirmed the impossible. Something massive had been dragged again and again across the plateau. Near the quarries, archaeologists uncovered lever pits and rope posts exactly where they were needed, traces of a system both brutal and brilliant. Compared to this, Egypt looked tame. Giza had the Nile and the desert's flat expanse. Tiwanaku had only thin air, punishing winds, and stones heavier than anything lifted in the Old World. And yet here, human hands moved mountains, not with aliens or miracles, but with persistence, knowledge, and a mastery of environment that rewrote the limits of endurance. But if moving them was astonishing, what the builders did next borders on the surreal. The stones of Pumapunku do not merely rest beside one another. They interlock in 3 dimensions, dovetailing like an enormous jigsaw puzzle designed to resist time itself. Mortise and tenon joints, T-shaped cutouts, and H-blocks fit together without mortar, seams tighter than modern concrete joints. In 2025, laser scans traced those gaps to less than a single millimeter. Engineering precision no empire of the same era even approached. For centuries, skeptics claimed the builders split stones randomly, their shapes accidental. Yet fracture mechanics now prove otherwise. They followed crystalline planes deliberately, shaping and splitting blocks with surgical control. Their understanding of stress distribution and vibration was uncanny, as if they anticipated earthquakes that would one day devastate lesser monuments. When modern engineers recreated the joints in seismic simulations, the results stunned them. The stones locked together, absorbed shock, refusing to topple, refusing to crack. What outsiders once dismissed as primitive stonework now revealed itself as disaster-resistant architecture, designed not merely to endure, but to outlast the apocalypse itself. And when the interlocking stones expanded outward into their full form, what emerged was no isolated temple ruin, but the heart of a city in the sky. Pumapunku was never a scattered jumble of blocks. It was part of a master plan woven into Tiwanaku's urban fabric. A vast plaza stretched across the plateau, aligned to the cardinal directions with accuracy that rivals satellite navigation. Drainage channels carved with geometric precision guided floodwaters away, sparing the city during the violent rainy season. Terraces lifted whole platforms against the slope of the land, stabilizing them with soil reinforcements invisible beneath the surface. Agricultural zones lay apart from ceremonial ones, a careful separation of sacred and practical, each serving its role in the rhythm of daily and spiritual life. Comparative studies reveal something extraordinary. It resembles modular prefabricated construction, as though the builders designed a kit of parts, assembling them piece by piece into a colossal system. In 2025, drone-mounted LiDAR peeled back the centuries of earth and collapse, revealing not randomness, but an intentional plan, foundations of buildings larger than scholars ever imagined. Digital reconstructions now let us glide over Pumapunku as it was, a shining, ordered city rising from the clouds, its stones carved not just to last, but to declare mastery over nature itself. But architecture here was never only about survival or order. The same precision that directed water and stabilized platforms was also harnessed to shape sound, light, and atmosphere. At dawn, the stones themselves begin to speak. Courtyards amplify echoes into rolling thunder. Hollow chambers magnify the human voice until it trembles with unearthly power. Priests chanting in low tones would not have sounded like men, but like gods, their words magnified into seismic resonance that rippled across the plaza. Solstice light ignites doorways at the exact moment of ritual, shafts of gold striking carved niches where offerings once lay. Acoustic engineers in 2025 recreated these effects and discovered bass tones rivaling the world's most advanced concert halls. It was not spectacle alone. These illusions bound community and cosmos, turning agricultural cycles into divine theatre where water flowed like veins of the earth and sound became proof of power. Ritual here was not symbolic, It was engineered experience, every vibration and reflection woven into belief. And then, the silence. Scattered megaliths lie tossed as if by giants, some sheared in half, others thrust into unnatural angles. Excavations reveal fractures consistent with seismic shock, fault lines running like scars beneath the plateau. Geological cores taken in 2025 confirm violent earthquakes struck this region in the centuries following Tiwanaku's rise. At the same time, evidence of sudden flooding shows Lake Titicaca once swelled into their ceremonial heart, drowning plazas in freezing waters. Fire-blackened soil layers suggest panic, destruction, and abandonment. Oral histories preserved by descendants speak of the land itself rebelling. The earth cracked open and swallowed the city. Archaeologists see signs of halted construction. Blocks abandoned at the quarry, half-shaped, never lifted into place. Unlike the pyramids, completed and polished into eternity, Pumapunku fell in medias res, its grand plan severed by nature's fury. What visitors see today are the ruins of a vision interrupted, a blueprint for a city that never reached its final form. But the shattered stones of the Andes are not isolated enigmas. Across the world, echoes appear. Japan's Yonaguni Monument, Easter Islands, basalt, moai, Egypt's precision-cut granite. Sites separated by oceans, but marked by a strange familiarity in their craftsmanship. H-blocks interlocking in Bolivia mirror modular assemblies in far-off cultures. Yet no evidence of a global empire ties them together. Instead, comparative research in 2025 reveals a profound truth. Humanity, in isolation, again and again, reached for the same solutions to the same impossible problems. Without wheels, pulleys, or steel, societies on opposite ends of the earth carved, lifted, and aligned with astronomical precision. Independent genius, not alien intervention, explains the parallels. And in that recognition lies something greater than conspiracy. Proof of a shared spark across civilizations, a universal drive to bend stone and light into monuments of permanence. Pumapunku becomes not a relic of lost gods, but a chapter in a wider human story, a mirror in which the ingenuity of one people reflects the creativity of all. And now that mirror sharpens. To uncover how such genius took form in the Andes, researchers turned not to chisels or ropes, but to data. For decades, archaeologists debated sketches and fragments, theories that stalled in the rubble. But in 2025, the conversation shifted when a hybrid team of human scholars and artificial intelligence began to think like the builders themselves. Thousands of drone scans captured every angle and fracture. Soil resistivity tests traced foundations buried deep beneath the earth. Laser profiles recorded carvings so fine they seemed untouched by time. Each fragment of evidence was fed into a neural model built to detect symmetry, ratios, and hidden design rules. What emerged was no chaos, but the ghostly outline of a monumental plan, an ancient order rising once more from the stones. Slowly, the model filled the voids. Walls rose, plazas expanded, gateways realigned with astronomical markers. It was as if a long-buried city had been summoned from the earth, not by pickaxes, but by pattern recognition. Scholars could now don VR headsets and step inside the ancient vision. They walked through vast courtyards whose surfaces glittered with water, carefully channeled through an underground network of canals. They passed beneath towering stone portals aligned so precisely with the horizon that the rising sun of the solstice blazed perfectly through their frames. They stood in chambers whose acoustics amplified the human voice into a thunderous echo, allowing a single priest to command the attention of hundreds. For the first time in centuries, Pumapunku was whole again. Indigenous Aymara and Quechua participants were invited to experience the reconstruction. Many broke down in tears. One elder whispered, "It is as though our ancestors are speaking again." For them, this was not just archaeology. It was memory, resurrected through machines that finally listened. Where colonial histories once silenced their voices, the stones, interpreted through AI, restored them. Pumapunku was no longer a broken puzzle. It was a living archive of ancestral genius. But the revival did not stop at data. Cultural resurgence followed. For centuries, the ruins had been treated as a curiosity, fodder for alien theories and pseudo-history documentaries. In 2025, that narrative collapsed. Scholars and indigenous leaders stood together to declare Pumapunku was not the work of outsiders, but of their own people, a civilization that had rivaled Egypt in vision and Mesopotamia in engineering. Bolivian authorities recognized the site as a national emblem. Schools rewrote curricula to emphasize Andean science and cosmology. Instead of tourists gawking at mystery blocks, visitors now witnessed traditional ceremonies revived on sacred ground. At dawn, dancers moved in rhythm with the sun's rays piercing through reconstructed gateways, their costumes glittering as drums thundered across the plateau. For the first time in centuries, ritual and architecture aligned once more. Globally, the impact was seismic. Pumapunku's digital resurrection forced historians to redraw the map of world civilizations. Textbooks that once portrayed the Andes as isolated, secondary cultures now had to acknowledge them as equal in complexity to the Old World's giants. Engineers marveled at the precision of water management systems designed to redirect floods while sustaining ritual pools. Astronomers praised the integration of architecture with celestial cycles, rivaling Stonehenge or the pyramids of Giza. Even acousticians were stunned at how sound traveled in reconstructed chambers, as though the builders had designed not just for sight, but for voice, chant, and song. And yet perhaps the most unsettling revelation was psychological. For decades, outsiders had demanded explanations that stripped humans of their achievements. It must have been aliens. It must have been a lost race. The 2025 discoveries demolished those myths. Pumapunku was not a puzzle because its builders were superhuman. It was a puzzle because modern people had underestimated the ingenuity of the past. The real mystery was never how the stones were carved and moved. The real mystery was why we refused to believe humans were capable of it. In this light, Pumapunku became more than ruins. It became a mirror. It forced humanity to confront its own arrogance, the assumption that genius begins only with modern technology or with civilizations already canonized in the West. The Andean builders had proven otherwise. With ropes, levers, copper tools, and generations of accumulated knowledge, they had mastered techniques we still struggle to replicate. They had not needed wheels or iron to move stones weighing hundreds of tons. They had needed only vision, patience, and faith in the cosmos. And yet the site was not without tragedy. The reconstruction revealed signs of unfinished work, vast platforms abandoned mid-construction, stones half-carved and left to weather in the open. Geological scans confirmed what oral traditions had long whispered. An earthquake, followed by flooding, had shattered the dream before it could be completed. Pumapunku was a vision interrupted, a masterpiece left in fragments. But its story did not end in collapse. Through AI and cultural revival, its spirit rose again. The builders may have been silenced by disaster, but their voices carried forward into the present, amplified not by gods, but by data. Today, standing amid the ruins, one sees both ruin and resurrection. To the naked eye, it is still a scattering of blocks, toppled walls, a half-erased design. But with augmented overlays, one can watch the ancient city materialize again, its plazas glowing with torchlight, its gateways blazing with the rising sun. Visitors step across thresholds not just into history, but into continuity. The Pumapunku of the past and the Pumapunku of the present now exist together, layered realities stitched by technology. The final revelation is simple yet profound. The ruins were never about aliens, never about lost races, never about mysteries unsolvable. They were about us, about the endless human drive to build, to align stone with sky, to carve meaning into matter. The scattered blocks of Pumapunku whisper not of the impossible, but of possibility, that even without modern machines, humans reached for the stars and etched their knowledge into the earth. In the end, the AI solved the mystery not by answering it, but by transforming it. Pumapunku is not just an archaeological site. It is a testament to human imagination, resilience, and the will to create monuments that outlast catastrophe. In that sense, the mystery is not over. It has only shifted. For if the ancients could achieve this with the tools they had, what then might we be underestimating about ourselves today?